Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
All right, welcome back to our show today, and do we ever have an incredible show for you lined up? I'm honored this afternoon to have Miss Carol Sanford on the line. Carol's the CEO of Carol Sanford Institute. Carol, I am so honored and excited to have you on the show this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I look forward to this conversation.
Fantastic. Well, let's just get right into it if we can. Why don't you give us a little insight about what it is that you do, about your business, what it is that you do to help people, and who it is that you actually work with.
I describe what I do as regenerative business education. And really it is a particular way of looking at business that I do through a variety of channels. I've published a couple of multi-award-winning books which are teaching people about how to work with a whole ecosystem of folks called The Responsible Business, how entrepreneurs can actually change the course of history with a business. Both of these have case studies in them. Those are both published by Josie Bass. So that's one way of doing education. A second is that I work through a university, the University of Washington, Bothell Campus School of Business. I founded and run a program there called the Regenerative Business. It's an executive education program. Everything that I do there and in other arenas is for business executives. Now, what I mean by that is they either own a business or are moving in to take over and run a business, or they're a business unit leader with a P&L responsibility. What I'm interested in is teaching them how to grow a business, how to do it with innovation and disruption, particularly what I call enlightened disruption. So regeneration is about being able to change a whole lot of things at one time, including the earnings margins and cash flow of your business. Then I have a third one, which is how you introduced me with Carol Sanford Institute. Carol Sanford Institute does does business education inside of corporations. So that one, where the University of Washington or individuals come out, so I may have Google, Starbucks, and Amazon all in the same room, sometimes even a Microsoft person. In the Carol Sanford Institute, we're out in an organization, and we're doing business education. But there's another thing that ties all of these together, which is finding the singularity of a business and using that to do everything else, to build business models, to build marketing plans, to build partnerships, even whether you're involved in mergers or acquisitions, or whether you're doing performance measuring and assessing, whether you're doing leadership or whether you're designing work. All of that has to be tied to the singularity of a business, and that's what I do with business education. That was a mouthful.
Oh, it sure was. What I want to pick up a little bit on this disruption model that you had talked about, because, you know, I hear that term being used in business quite often nowadays. Can you educate our audience on what you mean by that disruptive model?
I can, and I do think that most people use the term incorrectly. They think that it's just a big improvement or even an improvement. So I hear people, because Clay Christensen wrote some wonderful books about disruption, think that they want to put that label on themselves. What I mean by it is they literally are bypassing the current problems, issues, or even what just currently exists, and they go right around it toward the intention and create something that displaces, literally puts out of business most of the people who were doing the other thing. Now, the reason I put the word enlightened in front of it is I want people bypassing the business models and approaches to business that are not healthy, usually not even healthy for the business or so short term, but are not whole for society, for planet, for all of the stakeholders that need to be involved. So disruption, let me give you a quick example. If you think about when the first crowdfunding, let's take that as an example, came into existence. we knew that the economy had started to favor only very large business. It was hard for new businesses, startups. It was hard for anyone who needed to fund something to get money. The crowdfunding platform, literally, it did not try to improve loans. It did not try to improve banking. It said, let's create I guess you might call it a distributed model of funding. And they bypassed all of the problems, issues, and approaches to current work and have really caused the entire banking industry, the loan industry, to have to redefine itself. So disruption will by definition mean that you bypass the current way of working on it. You are not a problem solver. You are the one who is going after what was really intended, what's really needed, and bringing that about and just bumping everything else, displacing other things in the market.
How exciting is that?
Very. Very, very, very. And I have all my years been able to be involved in helping create that kind of shift. It's just, it's great fun.
Oh, I love it. How did you get started doing this, Carol?
Well, my mother would say when I was 4, but probably more relevant. I was displacing kids in the neighborhood in terms of what they wanted to play with. That's why she started using that term about me young. I think probably the most foundational part of it was I was teaching at a university in Silicon Valley called San Jose State University. I was in a program that was really boring, and I, along with 6 other faculty members across the business school, the urban planning school, and information technology school, created a program that involved Apple, it involved early members of Intel, Fairchild, others who were at that point in the electronics and Silicon Valley technology industries. And we said, if you come in to get a master's degree in any one of those programs, business, urban planning, or information technology, you have to study in all 3. And what we found was that it actually changed how people thought about the way they were creating things. So the business people started to say, wait a minute, people live in communities. We have to actually think about how it affects their lives. Same thing happened for information technology people who were much more driven by what they wanted to make, not how it affected life or business. And so bringing those together was my first deep experience, and I was a kid. I was the youngest one in the group, and I'm the one who got to go talk Apple into coming and joining it. I then went and worked with the team, and there were about 5 of them, who had founded the very first ever Procter & Gamble really innovation systems that even the current, the most recent CEO said really changed the course of P&G. And the way they did that was by, instead of trying to figure out how to make the best product on the market, they figured out how to make products that changed completely how people thought about what they were doing. And they even ended up making their own bottles and embedding labels. I mean, all that's really common now. They're the first ones who figured out how to get phosphates out before it was even legally required. Then I started learning from that team, who had moved on and were now working with other businesses, DuPont and ICI, chemical companies, personal care and consumer product companies, and then we began to move more into technology in the last few years. So what I learned from them was how you think about it, because most people keep using the way they currently think to try and improve something, and improvement is not disruption. In fact, it's usually kind of incremental. And so learning that process just was so exciting. I left the university setting because I couldn't get them to really want to disrupt anything in a sustained way, and took off doing it on my own for a bunch of decades now.
Carol, you are so incredibly passionate about what you're doing and what you're up to, and I want to talk a little bit about that in a moment. But deep down, what drives you and what gives you this passion to do what you do?
So I'm going to use a different word, and I'll tell you why. The word passion actually means suffering. Did you know that? That's its Latin root. I don't suffer at all. And what I have is, I would say it's something more like a sense of responsibility, a sense of belief in something that is, when I talk about change the course of history, I literally mean that, and that is what drives me. I know that you can do fairly small things and you can shift how something goes. Now think about the number of businesses we know of that you have had just a small interruption, like let's take Apple's iPod. it wasn't just the iPod, but it was the ability to create a whole system that made that work. And learning how to create systems around a product is the major way of disrupting and then being able to own a market and continue to invent in it. I love being able to help people learn to see the system as a whole. I like also and get, very enthusiastic and very vociferous about changing ecologically how something happens. One of the things that can happen when you do disruption is you can create not only a new space for product offerings or services, but you can do it in a way that it is ecologically more sound and that it is better for society. Google is one of my favorite engagements right now. I'm a part of a couple of innovation labs that they're doing. And one of the things that Google talks about all the time are moonshots. And what they mean by moonshots is that it should have a 10x effect on all of the people who would be touched by it. So you're not allowed to have some people get injured or get no effect. They want a 10x effect, not as much on, as Larry Page says, it's not 10x return for the company, it's 10x return for everything that gets touched. So when an engineer is working on their 20% time, or like one of these labs I'm talking about is the Google Food Innovation Lab, and they want to change our relationship to food on the planet. Now that's a huge moonshot, and they want to do it from Earth, where soil and agriculture and things happen, through the product production, food production, through chefs, all the way throughout to looking at the health of the eater and how food is not wasted. So when you start to be able to think in that comprehensive a way, you change our relationship to Earth, you would change it to every community that you're in, and you change it for the business and everyone who works inside of it. So that's what really drives me, is the ability to help people see that large a difference you could make with your life. Why just have a job? Why even have a great job? Why just have a small company when you could change the course of history for all of the stakeholders?
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. Let me ask you this. I am so happy you are on the show this afternoon, Carol. Let me ask you this. What leadership qualities in leaders do you most admire, and why?
Well, as I've said before, I don't believe in role modeling, right? So I don't believe in trying to be like anybody else. So as usual, I'm going to answer your question a little differently. My thing that I think makes a difference is I want for everyone to find their own essence, their own uniqueness, their own distinctiveness, their singularity, and to live from that. So what I do is, in fact, my second book, The Responsible Entrepreneur, is stories of Larry Page and how he got a lot to where he is, Steve Jobs, Oprah even, and Richard Branson, and then 15 other people you never heard of who are changing your life and you don't know about it. Knowing that what I go to is the story of how they are living out who they are. And like I tell a lot of the story of Oprah, who took a long time to find who she was, because she had a lot like I did. She had a really crippling childhood when she was growing up. That mine wasn't the same kind of crippling, but it had sort of the same impact on me for many years. And you have to climb out of whatever the circumstances are you are gifted with, and I do mean that, when you're born. And in that, you have to find what is deeply you, not your personality, not your strengths. None of those terms fit for me. I use the term essence often, which means that which, if you stripped everything else away, you couldn't take that away and still be you. So what I love are biographies, autobiographies, and I get to work with people. I get to hear their stories. And what I am in admiration of and totally inspired by are people who have found who they are uniquely. I don't want to be like them. I just want to know that you can be you and make things really important happen in the world from your own contribution that no one else could have done.
Carol, let me ask you this, and it's probably never been asked of you before in an interview, but I'm going to ask it.
Okay.
I have noticed you are so precise in your language and in the words that you use. How important is that to you, obviously? Can you share of why you place such a high level of importance on the precise language that you use?
Well, I think generally we're not very precise. And the amazing thing about the English language is that it has about 6 times as many words as most European languages, which we're drawn from. Our language is drawn from. But what happens with our words is most people think they actually reflect what we think, but they also shape what we think. And people don't know that. That if I say the word passion, I actually, because the word holds a connotation that we all know, and even though you couldn't articulate it, if you think about the plays, when I was a kid, there were these things called the Passion of the Christ, and what it meant was the suffering of Jesus Christ. And as I came along in life, I realized that discernment, the ability to actually see distinctions, is core to really creating anything meaningful and new. Otherwise, we use our language very sloppily, which really means we're using our thinking very sloppily. And it means we're losing our ability to differentiate. So if you want to serve customers and you say, I have people say this to me all the time when we first come in with our business education processes. I'll say, well, let's think about who the major customer types are. And they say, oh, they're all the same. They just want cheap cost. And I said, so nobody buys from you because of the distinctiveness of your product. Oh, no, they do. I said, all right, so there are probably different versions of that. And we go all the way down to finding individual customers they know who buy either their service or products or a system of products, and really begin to granularly look at what is unique about them, what is the essence. And then I say, all right, now you got one, now we're going to go find somebody who's not like them. That practice of becoming highly discerning and the ability to differentiate the essence and the effects that are what people are looking at are what make Apple amazing. That capacity is so core, and it is directly related to in terms of what it shows you you're doing and what it makes you think about through your language. So I have a lot of articles at carolsanford.com. I think I still have a language paper posted, and if not, people can send me an email at carol@carolsanford.com. And I'm happy to share some more thinking about why language really matters and how smart you are and how wise you can be in the market.
Oh, I'm definitely going to be getting that paper from you, Carol.
Hey, glad to share it.
Yeah, I love it. Let me ask you this. Before we came on the show this afternoon, I asked you how your day was going. You have so many exciting business projects that you're currently working on. Can you share some of those with our audience today?
Oh, you betcha. I think life is a gift. It is, to get a body and live in life and do something is such a gift. And so much of the time we waste it. We don't say, what can I actually do with this life? What could uniquely I do? And so I often have things underway. My husband died some years ago, so now nobody can even complain when I'm crazy with things. And my children are all grown and have grandchildren. So the current 3 endeavors that I have are for this year is I have launched as the executive producer of the Regenerative Business Summit. And that summit is to bring together edge thinkers. It's not a conference, no talking heads. You can't come brag and tell us what you do well. You have to come to think. And it's limited to only 200 people, and I'm not even sure how many seats we have left. But working on that summit is bringing together in a stream 6 different kinds of businesses. One is related to food because I want them to understand they're a part of a stream from earth to earth, through the growing, making, converting, being a chef. I want people in the stream talking to one another and understanding what they could do. The next one is sheltering, which is everything that has to be protected from the environment, which is habitat all the way to an office building. Transacting, which are people who are in the financial, engineering, technology world, which build platforms that allow people to partner and move across boundaries that they probably couldn't do on their own. The next one is adorning, which are the kind of businesses, everything from tattoos to furniture to makeup, even art that is done just for art's sake. That adorning tells us what tribe we're in. So we're going to, in each of those 4, we're going to have streams of people coming together, and there are 2 more. One is people who are in what I call recreating or recreating themselves, where you go to spas, you may go to movies and entertainment, music industry, even documentaries, because that whole stream is about taking us back to meaning. And the last one, you don't have many people in business, it's usually not for profits, but a few, which is communing, which is really connecting with something higher and beyond ourselves. And that could be nature. I mean, it could be a religious experience. I went a few years ago to a spiritual music festival in Fez, Morocco. Oh, it was transforming. It just really lifted you into another world. So I'm going to bring businesses together in each of those 6 streams and have them work on what regeneration means and how it is they can transform not just their business but the stream they're in. So that's one project. And I got 20 people who are members in my community and the Change Agent membership community that are pulling that off, and they're the ones who are inviting people. I'm not doing much inviting. The second stream is I am relaunching for another year at the University of Washington in Bothell, Washington, in the business school, a program called, I mentioned at the beginning, the Regenerative Business. And it is what Google calls, Mikhail Bacher, who is the head of the Food Innovation Lab, says it's better than an MBA and in only 15 days. So I do that for people who are executives in programs, particularly in the Puget Sound, although I have people flying up from California and even one from Mexico, because it doesn't require but 12 days on site stretched out over 9 months. The third project for this year is I'll have another book, and I've written 8 books, but only 2 are still in print. The new one is called The Regenerative Organization, and you'll like this, Designing Work for Enlightened Disruption. And I'm going to do my first self-published book. I'm very excited about that so that I can experiment with that market and not do everything as I have in the past with Josie Bass, so we'll find out how that goes. And it'll be out in September in time for the October 18th through 20th conference. So that's the next 6 months of my life.
Always busy, always busy. Let me ask you this. We are running out of time during this segment. But let me ask you this. I really want your thoughts on what's different about running a business in the 21st century.
Now, first, I don't like the word busy, of course, because busy sounds like you're filled up with stuff. I say I am fulfilled. I only do what I want any minute. All right, so for the 21st century, technology changed the 20th century. There was no question. I believe there are several things, and I've written a few things about the 21st century, but one of them is the transformation of consciousness. Now, that sounds weird, but businesses actually are beginning to understand that it's a very practical thing. There's an article written about my help in Harvard Business Review by Jeffrey Hollander, who was writing the transition of his own role where he was leaving, having been the founder and CEO for 30 years and was transitioning out to go start another business. That was 7th generation. And what he did is he said, what Carol teaches is consciousness. And he said, now that sounds like you're staring at your navel, but you're not. It is actually being able to have 2 parts of yourself, one that can watch and one that can do. Because if you can't have one that's watching and deciding what it is that you're really creating, see what's happening, and make choices, you can't compare how well you're doing. It's a very practical thing. Google is now doing it, not with me. I don't teach meditation. Well, they're doing it. There are conferences everywhere that are about meditation. I think we're waking up to the power of our own mind in a business sense and the power of our own thinking. And that underpins what I do, where it's a lot about critical thinking skills that are systemic and a lot about personal development. So I think that's going to be the power of this coming century.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this as we wrap up this segment. How can people get in contact with you, Carol?
Well, I have several websites. They can go for the summit to the regenerativebusinesssummit.com. If they want to look at what I do with corporations and some of the case stories online, that's at carolsanfordinstitute.com. That's the corporate relationship. Inside that website, there is one place you can click on the navigation bar that has the university program I do. If you're interested in interviews or looking at my books, or I do podcasts of my own. I run 3 different podcast streams. I also have blogs that I guest blog for many, many journals, newspapers, Stanford Innovation Review, The Guardian, CNBC, and that blogging all can be found at carolsanford.com. And you can find radio, TV, things like that. So a lot of places to find more about me.
Fantastic. Well, Carol, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. And I would love to have you back, but before I have you back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to email you for that paper you have on language, and I'm going to be ready for you.
Yes, please do. And I'd be happy to come back, TC. It's been great fun.
Yeah, I'd like to have you back when you get closer to your book release, possibly, and let's bring you back here. And you just have so much incredible insight. And, again, I want to just thank you for taking the time this afternoon to be on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for this edition of the show. We thank you so much, and we'll see you the next time.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.